Hey, Beer Nerd, live here on YouTube tonight. I'm excited to dive into some beer and some beer news tonight. So I'm hoping we're gonna have a good time going through quite a few things. Just get myself in frame here a little better. Oh goodness! All right, today we've got a whole bunch of cool beer stuff going on. Lots of cool beer news out of the last 2 weeks that I'm going to cover today. But before I get into that, definitely got to crack a beer first so we can get into this. Today I am going to be drinking Totally Naked by New Glarus Brewing Company out of New Glarus, Wisconsin. It's a really solid beer. It's their summer lager seasonal. Really tasty. Looks really nice in the glass. Let's go ahead and get it in the glass and see how it pours out today. Got my nice looking fancy glass here. We'll just get this going. But yeah, it's get this going. But yeah, it's it looks like a lager. Pours out really nice. That beautiful straw color. That nice, fluffy, not quite pillowy. Maybe a little bit coarser than that, but a nice head on there. Yeah, just great for when the weather heats up, which it is today. Mm. Yeah, it's been so hot lately. And then, of course, you hear all the crazy stories around the world of like wildfires, setting records left and right everywhere and all sorts of places. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Mm. So, no time like the present to have a beer. I also got some cool updates this week. Tomorrow, I got my weekly Beer by the Numbers episode coming out. That episode is going to be covering hop production here in the US because I found some really cool data from the USDA on what kind of hops are produced and where they're produced. So I'm going to cover a lot of that data and all the really cool things like that. Um, mm. Yeah, I just got to keep pounding this thing. It's too hot. Um, but I have a little quiz question for the few people who are already watching here, kind of early in the stream. What do you think the most popular hop variety grown in the U.S. is? That's kind of an interesting question. There's hundreds of varieties, but there's one that is produced quite a bit more than any other hop here in the U.S. So I'm wondering what you think that is. Let me know in the chat, and you can check out my video coming out tomorrow morning if you want to get the answer to that. So keep an eye out for that because it's a really cool episode. It's got a lot of great data and a lot of good numbers. So, of course, I love digging into that stuff. And then later this week, I have a new, hopefully new series of videos that are going to start coming out called Beer Tech Tested, where I take some cool beer related gadgets or products online and actually put them through a little bit of a scientific test myself. So later in the week, I'm going to be doing a bottle insulator I got off of Amazon to see, just how cool it can keep your beer and for how long. So that was a lot of fun to make that video. So I hope you guys enjoy that. That's coming out later this week on Thursday. So aside from that, that's all the updates I have today. And this beer is really good. I see Hops and Bros in the chat. Hey, what's up? Glad to see you guys here. Oh, yeah, you went on a cool trip to Italy. I've heard a lot about the Italian craft beer scene, and it's kind of interesting to think, they have such an ingrained wine culture there that it's crazy to think that craft beer is starting to take off there. And it seems like it's a bit of an uphill battle, but it's one that they're definitely winning. So I really like to see that going on. And then, greetings from Ireland. Hello, hello. Actually, you can just take me right into my first beer news segment. And I'm pulling up my notes on my computer here, but apparently Ireland's beer production, well, not beer production, I should say. They produce a lot of beer in general, but their craft beer production has really taken off in the last 4 years, which is really, really cool to see. Here in the U.S., we were so used to just years of strong single and double-digit volume growth in terms of our craft beer production. But other nations haven't quite seen that yet. But Ireland is apparently there because over the last 4 years, beer production in the craft sector has skyrocketed 177%. So more than doubling, which is really, really crazy. And it has doubled so much that the Brewers Association in Ireland is actually prompting the government to reconsider the cancer warning they were planning on placing on beer labels there, because obviously drinking a lot of beer does have some health consequences, including liver cancer. So they were planning on forcing all the beer companies in Ireland to put that on their labels. But it's created so many jobs and done so good for the local economy there that even like the government has to reconsider, like, okay, do we really want to curb sales a little bit by really bringing this risk to the forefront, or do we try to really capture the economic benefit that craft beer makes? So yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation going on there. But for beer lovers, absolutely no time like the present in Ireland. Um, hmm. Joe from the Beer Patrol, hello, how you doing tonight? Good to see you. Del Croy says I make my own Merlot and white Burgundy. Oh, and Pilsner. Good. Pilsner too. Glad to hear that. I got to get more into wine. It's just, how some people can't drink certain liquors. For some people, like my fiance Brenda, who occasionally streams with me, she'll drink rum and she'll get an instant hangover, but I can drink rum all day. But she loves tequila, and that's a little more sketchy for me. So wine is actually kind of one of those things that tends to not react so well with my body. So I tend to stay away from it, but I do have an appreciation for all the cool flavors that are in there, for sure. So the next story I have, we've got Ireland seeing really explosive craft beer growth. But kind of on the other side of the spectrum is one country I was really looking forward to seeing how their production was going to change over the years was Japan, because they were apparently making some really great beers, the kind of classic Japanese cultural discipline and work ethic, and we're pouring that into beer. And I was really interested to see what was happening. But apparently last year, their shipments of beer dropped 3.6%, down to about 183 million cases, which is still a lot, but in a nation that is half a billion, what are they, about 250 million strong, like that's not particularly a lot of beer. So it's weird to see a nation kind of take a step backward when it comes to beer. A lot of the brewers there are blaming the country's government. They're blaming the government's new policy, which kind of forced stricter rules around alcohol sales. So I know in some states here in the U.S., you can't do things like have happy hours at bars, offer special discounts for time of day, things like that. And apparently some of those kind of rules are to blame for Japan's beer woes. So, but I'm hoping their export volume is still up, because I still want to try some more Japanese beer. I think that would be a really cool thing to do. So moving on, like I said, it's been pretty hot here, and it's been hot, just about everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. And earlier this summer with the World Cup, brewers in Europe were kind of facing a shortage of carbon dioxide, which obviously very important to force carbonate your beer. But now in Germany, we kind of have a second problem that's coming again, is that they don't have enough bottles and crates for packaging. They're having a really tough time actually bottling and packaging up all their beer. So it's kind of becoming a recurring supply problem in Europe, in terms of can we get enough packaging supplies? How much do I have to talk to my distributor to make sure my CO2 shipment gets here on time? And some breweries are really personal about how they make bottles. So a lot of them have certain etchings or embossing on the glass of the bottle to really kind of set themselves apart. But obviously, getting all these custom made bottles makes it really difficult to keep a good amount of packaging material out there for brewers to use. So bottle makers there are working absolutely overtime, especially as Oktoberfest is coming up. And as we all know, that is a big, big deal. Mm. And I, for one, am actually looking forward to it because fest beers are one of my absolute favorite styles of beers. So I always look forward to Oktoberfest each year when those good beers start to come out. So just gonna keep on rolling with the um, different news stories out of beer the last 2 weeks. This one was all over the web, and I didn't cover it early enough, and I probably could have covered it last week. But apparently, Canada is they've got some scientists there that are definitely brewing the first beer infused with cannabis now that Canada has legalized weed. It's going to be interesting to see how the two start to play together and what sort of extra rules are going to come about, things like that. You know, uh, Hops, the main bittering agent of your everyday beer, that plant is from the Cannabaceae family, so it's a close cousin to cannabis itself. So it's definitely going to be able to lend a lot of good flavors to the party, which is what I personally um, really kind of like about the idea because to me there's something about just trying to mix together different drugs for different effects for just to play around that just it doesn't quite sit as well with me. But if you're using a plant that's actually related to something that's in almost every single beer that's produced, well, then it's going to be interesting to see how those beers turn out. We already use dank as a describer for IPAs. So I, for one, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the weed beers as they come out. Mm. Hi there, BrewQ. BrewQ. Yeah, that's right. Thanks so much for the nice compliment. I really enjoy your channel, mostly because I really like grilling and barbecuing and smoking meat myself. So I get a lot of great tips over on your spot. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, I haven't gotten to run the smoker as much as I'd like this summer. I gotta go down to the old butcher and get some ribs or something for the next couple weeks here. Because there's nothing better than sitting outside on a hot summer day with a nice cold beer and a big slab of meat on the grill and just getting to enjoy the weather and enjoy kind of the fruits of your labor, especially if you brewed the beer yourself. I didn't brew this myself. It looks way too fine and classy and well filtered for me to have brewed it myself. But mm. Yeah, so I'm going to dive back into these news stories because I have a lot of them. So, cannabis beer is coming soon to a Canadian province near you. Um, Speaking of which, so all right, I've been meaning to do. I want to maybe I can get your opinions in the chat if you want to give me your opinion on this next thing. But I've been meaning to do a video on beer and how it can be used as kind of a bit of a workout recovery tool. So, obviously, after you do a workout, you've depleted a lot of the carbohydrate stores that are in your fat and muscle cells. And so, obviously, beer is a great way to replenish those stores. There's quite a few carbohydrates. It is a wheat based product most of the time. So, yeah, I mean, it does work in terms of replenishing energy levels. But there's also a few cool proteins in beer, different chemical compounds that could be used when it comes to muscle recovery that might prove very, very helpful for kind of a younger, more fitness conscious generation that I'm a part of to be using. But on the other hand, of course, obviously alcohol is technically a poison. You could, if you drink too much, you will die. And it does have a myriad of other health consequences as well. So I've been like I want to talk about how this workout recovery stuff can be helped with beer because there's a lot of people that do beer runs. There's a lot, even in my area, there's a lot of people organizing, 5, 10K runs to different breweries throughout the summer or cycling to different breweries, things like that. It seems that a lot of people think exercise and good craft beer can really go hand in hand, which personally, I really like it too, because I have done my fair share of long 5 mile walks to a brewery just because I needed something to do that day. Um, but on the flip side, there are some people that say, there's some studies out there that go the exact opposite way. So now I've got conflicting studies talking about, you know, is beer beneficial to drink after a workout? Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe it actually breaks down recovery proteins, or digesting it in a certain way doesn't help you. Yeah, so it's kind of a weird topic that seems to have all sorts of conflicting science. Although, if you look to any food product these days, you'll get conflicting science about anything. Carbs, fat, protein. People will say you need too much or not enough, or all that kind of stuff. So it's been kind of a weird topic that's been eluding me in terms of finding a good data-based consensus to reach on that one. I don't know. Does anybody else enjoy having a beer after a lot of work or a workout, something like that? But yeah, let me know in the chat. I'm interested to hear your opinion. Would you like to see a video on something like that? Be sure to let me know. I had this study pulled up that got published recently, but that there's just so many studies saying opposite things that, like, I don't even know if I should bring it up here. Another cool story I saw this week. So we know craft beer is starting to take over various sporting events, ballparks. I know, here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area and kind of greater Minnesota, a lot of people are very excited to have beer at ballparks, football games, anything that goes down nicely when the weather's nice outside and you're out watching some sporting events. And I think even our local soccer club, the Minnesota United, has beer at their games. So it's cool to see. But, now we've got stadiums that are starting to take beer service one step further. So let me get the park name right. So the Philadelphia Phillies, which is a professional baseball team here in the U.S., at Citizens Bank Park Stadium, they're going to start beer delivery service right to your seat. So the cool thing they did is they put a QR code on every seat back in the stadium. And basically all you have to do is scan the QR code with your iPhone, and it'll bring up a web page where it knows what seat you're at, and you can order a beer to be delivered straight to you in your seat. So you don't even need to get up and go and bother leaving your seat to go grab a beer. They'll just bring it straight to you. Don't even need to tell them where you're sitting, because they already know. And then apparently you use Apple Pay to finish the transaction. But yeah, that sounds like a really cool way to integrate technology and beer service to me. That you can just order a beer right on your phone. They'll rush a can or a bottle right out to you. So yeah, it seems like a really cool way for stadiums to sell more beer. So yeah, BrewQ, you're exactly right. No more long lines to get your beer, which I I definitely I've definitely had to stand in a line or two to get beer and wait 10, 15 minutes just to get something delicious in my hand to go back to my seat and miss parts of the football, baseball game, whatever you're watching. So yeah, really cool to see that they're kind of finding new ways to integrate technology and beer. I always love learning about stories like that. Um, so that was really cool to see. Let's see what else is going on in the world of beer. There's a cool article in Forbes a couple weeks ago about how craft beer has basically achieved about 23% market share in the U.S. Of course, still an all-time high, still breaking records, still taking up more space from the big macro brands of beer. But they were talking about how the marketing for the industry is really beginning to mature a little bit. So traditionally, you would see beer marketing mostly on television, accompanying sporting events. You would see beer marketing all around stadiums, different spots where people like to enjoy a beer or two or three. So, marketing that really targets people at home and marketing that targets people in the bar in terms of paraphernalia around the bar and in at certain events, concerts, things like that. You'd see beer logos all over the place. So, what this article was talking about was how there are certain brands that are really beginning to invest in doing all those same things that traditional beer marketing did, that the big companies did. But now you'll go out to a bar and maybe they'll have like here, one of our big regional brewers is Summit Brewing. They make a great extra pale ale, by the way, if you can find it. The Summit EPA, definitely worth trying. But they started, they're all over ballparks. You can get Summit coasters at your local bar. So it's pretty obvious to me that they're starting to give away a lot of the same merchandise that, the large mega brewing corporations are. And now you'll even start seeing TV commercials for different craft brands. I know Lagunitas was bought out by AB InBev, but they're just I've seen a couple commercials for them, and then as well as Goose Island. Goose Island, I think, is doing a big summer marketing push here in terms of just television commercials that I've seen lately. And I know those are backed up by the marketing power of the big corporations, but I've even seen a couple of local radio advertisements for our local beer brands here. So, like this article in Forbes was talking about, I really think that, yeah, it's correct. A lot of these smaller beer brands are starting to branch out into different areas of marketing. It's not so much word of mouth and beer review websites and beer trades and even crazy beer nerds and beer reviewers like me. Now it's a lot of more traditional marketing that craft beer is expanding into, and I think that's really, really cool. I want to see how that continues to push forward. So a couple weeks ago, I had a story, or I had a video. Sorry, I had a video about brewery safety and how being a lot of small businesses, but producing, industrial grade products using industrial grade chemicals and cleaners. I was a little bit impressed that the craft beer industry didn't have more accidents than it does normally. Um, so I was talking a little bit about the safety record and things like, there's all sorts of risky things. There's like confined spaces, boiling vats of liquid, industrial grade cleaning chemicals. All these things are in these breweries, and a lot of times we don't think about it. We don't recognize that when we walk into a tap room, we're actually walking out basically right next to a factory. Um, and so and so this week, there was an incident um, about I think this was in North Portland. Yep. They went to Widmer Brothers Brewing, where there was an anhydrous ammonia leak coming from their basement, which is kind of crazy. So, ammonia is, a pretty common cleaning agent at a brewery, but it's also kind of a scary chemical because it's a colorless and odorless gas. So you're not going to see it, you're not going to smell it. The only way, like, fortunately, this brewery did have a setup for detecting this stuff, which is really, really fortunate because a lot of people could have gotten hurt. A lot of the brewers that were there early in the morning trying to get to work on some packaging, they could have gotten hurt. So it was good to see that everyone kind of came out of that okay. But it kind of goes to my, I don't want to call it a fear, but like my slight nervousness about how nonchalantly we kind of treat walking into a brewery space. Because like when I come to think of it, like how many industrial grade spaces are you walking into on a weekly basis? Unless unless you're working in one, which I suppose you're walking in there all the time. But like, how many industrial grade spaces you're not familiar with do you walk into on a weekly basis? But a lot of people feel just fine about walking into a brewery. They don't pay it any mind. They don't give it any second thought. Um, and yet, I would definitely give a second thought walking into a foundry or someone that assembles microchips, things like that. I'd be paying attention, kind of safety minded. But a lot of people walk into a brewery or factory and feel very, very safe and fine. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that they serve alcohol. But it just kind of blows my mind that we don't hear more stories like this. We don't hear about crazy gas leaks or different stuff like that. So yeah, it's one of those interesting things that just twiddles around in my brain all day as I wish I was drinking beer while at the office or something. Mm. Mm. Hops and Bros apparently in the middle of a thunderstorm. Yeah, we got a little rain this weekend here. Could use a little more, although the garden's been looking pretty good this year. It's good year for growing. So we've had a good time in terms of the amount of produce we've been able to pull out of the ground this year. So, ah. Apparently Mittelfrüh. Am I saying that right? Mittelfrüh? That's probably, hopefully close. Burning through 3 gigs a day to watching YouTube. That's right. That sounds like me every day. I probably spend way too much time on YouTube, but that's how it goes. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Speaking of, warm weather, we were talking earlier about how Germany, there's so much demand for bottled beer this summer because it's been so warm. Well, way up in Norway, they are setting records for beer consumption this summer, which I had a couple buddies in college who went to Norway for a semester, and they were telling me that beer and liquor and things like that were pretty expensive over there. And so actually, it's kind of interesting to see that bottled beer sales are up about 18% when compared to the first half of the year, which is a huge summertime jump. The average here in the U.S. is about 5-6%, a little bit more beer in the summer. Granted, we drink a lot of beer year round, so we don't see a huge jump, but like an 18% jump is like a crazy big demand spike for beer over there. So it's interesting to see, and it's kind of coming at the expense of soft drinks too, because apparently soft drinks sales are flatter down compared to the last year. So yeah, it's cool to see that Norway is really diving into the beer this summer, at least in order to beat the heat, which I love to do too. Okay, y'all, I have a tragic story next. This was about a beer spill that happened near me, and I feel a little bad for it because about 20,000 bottles of beer got run off the road when a semi tipped over while going through a curved ramp here in Minnesota. And we lost about 20,000 bottles of beer. All these were apparently, there's kind of a light lager brand here called Grain Belt. And every summer they do a blueberry version, kind of like a blueberry shandy, something like that. And yeah, it was about 20,000 bottles of blueberries, and it kind of dyed the road blue in the pictures that I'm seeing. So it's kind of strange to see that all this blue beer got spilled over the road, which was pretty funny. But of course, we hate to see any beer get spilled, no matter the quality or the color. So I'm gonna drink to that. Mm. All right, let's see. I got a few more stories here. Let's see. So Guinness is opening their first brewery in the US in 64 years. I think they do some contract brewing here in the US. But a while back, this is like way, way, way back, I talked about um, Guinness and their plans to build a brewery in Maryland. And what I was talking about at the time was Maryland was not really a super friendly state when it came to their beer production laws and how much tax they would have to pay and things like that. Um, so it was interesting to see how they were basically rewriting their entire beer law, um, all of their beer laws, just to accommodate Guinness building this giant brewery there in Maryland. It was weird because they would make certain rules like you can only serve X number of barrels in your tap room unless you produce more than 5,000 barrels a year. So, like, very clearly, like, no small brewer would be able to produce that much beer. So, all the small brewers had to abide by this rule, by XYZ rules, while Guinness got an exception to almost every single rule because they're so big and they create so many jobs and bring so many tourists in. Um, but it looks like they finally kind of settled on something. They got the brewery built and it's finally open over there in Maryland. And when I went to Dublin, what was that? Probably 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. I did get a chance to go over to the Guinness Brewery, and that was quite the experience. The coolest part wasn't necessarily like, the beer was obviously great. The tour was kind of nice, but the coolest part was all the Guinness marketing they had there. All the old signs and posters and how they used to recommend Guinness for pregnant women and all the cool photos they have over the years of people drinking and advertising and selling and enjoying Guinness. It was really cool to see how that kind of iconic brand was born and created and all the marketing behind it. But at the same time, the beer production portion was pretty straightforward. And they don't actually really take you to the beer production floor. It's more like a museum tour as opposed to like actual factory. Now, apparently, um, Guinness is not going to be making any of the Guinness Stout here in the U.S. Apparently, they still want it all to be imported for whatever reason. So what that brewery is going to focus on is just brewing huge quantities of the Guinness Blonde Lager, and then also kind of being their flagship tap room here in the U.S. too, over in Maryland. And I'm sure they'll open up a cool little exhibit about the history of the brand too. So I think it might definitely be worth the visit. Apparently, the last brewery they had here in the U.S. closed in 1954, and it was mostly here after World War I to kind of be Guinness's backup brewery in the industrial West. After um, the UK and Ireland kind of got involved in World War I and World War II. Guinness kind of wanted to have a backup brewery that could serve the drinking public of Western Europe and the United States in the event that their brewery got damaged in any way, shape, or form, or they lost a bunch of people in the war, which is actually kind of an interesting fun fact. Mm. Rod J, what's up? How's it going tonight? Glad to see you on. And Burning Beard, thanks so much for joining too. Oh, you picked out a few beers for me. All right, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be sure to do a beer mail and tasting video. I'm wrapping this beer up, but tonight I've got Totally Naked by New Glarus Brewing Company out of New Glarus, Wisconsin. It's their summer seasonal lager. Really tasty, really solid beer. Mm. Burning Beard, yes, she does like sours a lot. She will drink whatever sour. So our palates are so crazy different when it comes to beer now. So she'll basically drink any sour that is so chemically acidic, probably all the way up to like nuclear waste grade sour beer. Meanwhile, I can't get that far into the barrel aged sours. The really heavy kettle sours, things like that. They don't sit well with me. They give me a little bit of indigestion. Uh, and then I'm on the other end. I'm a bit of a hop head myself. I love a good piney American, classic American IPA. Let's really over hop it. Let's really do it. So yeah, I think 3 IPAs and a sour coming my way. Yeah, that sounds great. So that is perfect. That sounds wonderful. That's right up our alley. Hey, speaking of American IPAs, for everyone who wasn't here in the beginning, I've got a cool video coming out tomorrow about hop production here in the U.S. and how it kind of has varied and shifted throughout history, as well as where most of the hops are produced and what kind of hops they produce. But I threw out this question at the beginning of the stream. It is, what hop variety do you think is most produced here in the U.S.? There is one variety of hop that is king here in the U.S. and gets quite a bit more production than everything else. So I want to know what hop variety you think that is. Let me know in the chat. And if you want to find out the answer, be sure to tune back in tomorrow morning. I'm going to have that video going live tomorrow. So you can find out the answer then. But yeah, let me know what you think it is. All right, I think I got one more story. Actually, it's more of an opinion thing. So earlier, I was kind of talking about how craft beer marketing has matured. We see more craft beer related commercials, more stadiums, more in-bar advertisements, more advertisements just basically anywhere people like drinking. There's more of a craft beer presence than there ever has been before. But I saw a couple debates on a few different beer forums and the beer Reddit this week where people were talking about, how do we make beer more approachable to people who aren't so into craft beer? Obviously, if you're watching right now, you're probably a fan of craft beer, and you love craft beer content, especially here on YouTube. But a lot of people are like, well, we really need to win some more converts, and I don't know if that's really the right attitude. Like, are we going out to win converts at this point? Because there's over 5,000 breweries here in the U.S. now. So like, if you're like, craft beer has never been more available. Stadiums, your neighborhood grocery store, all your bottle shops, like, everybody's selling craft beer because people love it so much. So do we have like a duty as a beer community to go out and find more people? Or is it do we really need to worry about being approachable? Because the industry is so wide and so varied now, and people are brewing so many different things that, like, if you're inclined to like beer, there's something you can like that you can find out there. And maybe that's it. Maybe there's just too much beer out there right now. And Rod J says, make good beer and everything else will be handled. Which I think is pretty true. I think that's a great point. I guess the question is there too much mediocre beer or not right now? So, hey, if y'all give me a minute, I'm going to go get another beer. I'm empty right now. So I'm going to go get another one. I'll be right back. A little too humid on my patio tonight. So what beers are we drinking out there tonight? I want to know. Let me know in the chat. Because it's Monday. It's a tough day at work usually. If you're working, a 9-to-5 gig like me, you're back to work. You want to come home and enjoy a good beer. So the second beer, I think I've drank this on stream before. But this is Short Pants by Bauhaus. Apologize. My light is getting in the way here of the label. But um, it's a lemon shandy. It's their summer seasonal, kind of their answer to the Leinenkugel's summer shandy, which is insanely popular up here. So, we're not, in the upper Midwest. I don't know how it is around the rest of the country. Maybe you can let me know. But that Leinenkugel's summer shandy, really popular summer beer. And will even come in keg to most of the local bars during the summer. So, yeah, but this is kind of the craft version. It's a little brighter, not quite as sweet. So you get a little bit more of the lemon and a little less of the kind of artificial kind of twang like that. And they did a really good job with it. And this is by Bauhaus Brewing out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you get a chance, they have a YouTube channel. So if you search Bauhaus, Bauhaus, they have a really cool YouTube channel where they make hilarious commercials for all their beers. And I really like their stuff. And all their beer is really great. But they're one of the few breweries that actually has a presence on YouTube, which is something I really like encouraging. So I know Dogfish Head has their own YouTube channel that's really good. Their founder loves to get on and do live Q&As, which I think is really, really cool. I wish breweries, in particular craft breweries, would do more of that. Guinness has a channel, but it's kind of corporate marketing promotion stuff, so it's not quite as fun. But then there's this little local brewery that is making craft lemon shandies for summer. That's hanging out making crazy commercials for all their beers that are just hilarious. So yeah, give it a check it out if you have the chance, for sure. All right, so what are we drinking here? Burning Beard. Fresh Flow IPA from Block 15. Apparently I'm getting one, which is nice to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Stoneyard Vineyards doing a homebrew cherry delight. Just tapped from the keg. Very nice. That sounds delicious. I'm a big cherry guy myself. So that sounds really cool to me. Let's see. Mittelfruh says Octopus Wants to Fight from Great Lakes Brewing of Toronto, an American Pale Ale. Sounds very good for a warm and apparently stormy evening. So I hope you enjoy that one. So I think the last stream we were on, or maybe it was a couple ago, but I had Brenda here with me, and she was talking about how she doesn't really like beer names that have a lot of a ton of words that are more than like two or three words. So that's what triggered that in my head, is the beer name Octopus Wants to Fight. 4 words. One of them is 3 syllables long. And she was like, yeah, I hate having to walk up in a crowded tap room or at a bar and trying to order your 6-word long beer name that you think is really creative, but really just kind of makes me confused or on how to order it or things like that. Which I thought was an interesting point that, at a certain point, although your beer name might be really unique, it might actually be a little bit detrimental to you because people might not want to order it, or, some people even get anxiety dealing with bartenders or waitresses, and they don't want to feel like they're imposing or look stupid or something like that. And having to say out a full beer name, especially when you're 3 or 4 brews deep, might be a little intimidating for you. So, yeah, I wonder, that'd be an interesting study to do. Although I don't know if I could ever figure it out. If shorter names for beers sell better than longer ones, or if it makes no difference, that'd be something I'd be interested to know. Burning Beard, do I like peach in my IPAs? I do. I think peach is a good beer flavor. I think it pairs well with a lot of the bitterness that hops bring to the table, and a little bit of the kind of lighter malt side. And peaches are actually really close to my favorite fruit that I like in beer, which is apricots. Apricots are my absolute favorite. I brewed an apricot wheat last fall, and that was one of my favorite batches of beer. That beer was awesome. And then I also last summer, I brewed a peach ginger golden ale, which turned out really good. It had a ton of ginger flavor and a nice hint of peach in there. So yeah, I do like peach as a beer flavor overall. Mm, mm. So oh man, there's just nothing better than sitting outside or in my porch anyway, with a nice beer on a hot summer night with a cold beer, uh, just chasing it down. Burning Beard said, "Good, that's coming with me. A peach apricot IPA." See, look, you know me so well, Burning Beard. I don't understand how you've gotten to know me so well through these chats. Mm. All right, let me see. Do I have any more beer stories? I think I might be out for the week. I'm sure I could find some more. Anybody else hear a cool beer story or see anything cool online? Michael Frua says some of the names he's seen are dumb. Um, First thing I ask is what style it is. Order by the style. Yeah, probably a safer way to go. The names are to appeal to hipsters, which he is not. Yeah, fair enough. You're probably right. A big, long, like a weird, crazy, kind of out there nihilistic sentence probably does not appeal to everyone, does it? Um, I do think ordering by style can be more difficult at some places than others. So I think one live stream I did, Brenda and I talked about our 5 favorite beer styles, and my top favorite beer style is one that's great during the summertime, and that's the Kolsch. And so that's the traditional golden ale brewed with lagering techniques out of Cologne, Germany. And it's been getting more and more popular steadily here in at least my part of the United States for the last few years, which I'm really excited to see. But on the flip side of that, U.S. brewers are never ones to adhere strictly to a style. So I've gotten a lot of Kolsches that are not really what I was expecting. I've gotten some that are like pretty much most of the way to a pale ale. They're so hoppy. I've gotten others that have a really hard carbonation to them. Um, and so it's been a little difficult. Sometimes I find it difficult ordering by the style because I'm like, I have this very idealized and maybe this is a personal problem. It very well could be because I love Kolsch's so much. I love the certain flavor profile and the noble hops that they use, the good German hops. And then if you do one really, really well, it gets a really pillowy, fluffy, 2 fingers of head on it. And I love, Kolsch's in the really traditional way. But it always seems like such a roll of the dice when I go into a brewery that I've never had their Kolsch before and try to order one. So yeah, I definitely try to order by style myself, but sometimes it can be difficult. And then, if you talk about something like, and then, you've got styles that cast a wider net too. So you've got something like an American Pale Ale, which can cover, anything from what is basically an IPA all the way over to something that's a little bit hoppier than like a blonde or a golden. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. The challenges of such variety of beer, and it's totally an embarrassment of riches, right? It's totally that we have so much great beer around all the time that you show up and expect one thing and you get something else, and it's like, oh well, maybe I'm a little disappointed, but the fact that I have all these options is really great too. Stoneyard Vineyards said he did an apricot mead and really loved it. Yeah, I agree. That's the one thing I haven't tried brewing yet is making a mead. I have all the equipment to do so. I don't see why I wouldn't. My buddy has done a couple, and his actually came out fairly good the few times I've had it. And I wasn't a huge honey guy when I was younger, but as I get older, I am starting to feel the kind of subtleties of honey a little bit more. So it's really cool. Birdie Beer says loves a hoppy pills or a lager. Yeah, I gotta say I've been really trying to try a lot more lagers this summer at the local breweries around town. Um, I think lagering is an art that a lot of craft brewers are trying to capture now. I think a lot of them are also trying to really trying to figure out ways to cut their costs a little bit to get some lagers that are more in the price range of, the Buds, the Coors, the Millers, things like that. So it's interesting to see these brewers kind of walk a fine line and really make good, American lagers. To try and grab a little bit of market share and kind of, say, hey, craft brewer, we know you or not craft brewer, hey, craft beer fan, we know you really like, a nice American style lager on a hot day. Like, if it's 90 degrees out, you know what? I could reach for a porter or something, but more often than not, I'm probably going to go buy a 6 pack of Miller Lite or Coors Light and just hang out and beat the heat that way. So, they're really reaching out to that crowd too, which I think is cool. Mm. Hmm. Mitchell Frua says Bias Brewing just outside of Ottawa got their start in 2005 with a lagered ale. So yeah, out of respect, they didn't call it a Kolsch as it's not from Cologne. See, now that is major respect there. When you're not even gonna you're not even gonna say it's part of the style because it's not brewed where the style originated from. That's a lot of respect for the beer right there. Uh, I don't know if I think everybody needs to have that crazy level of dedication to ensuring the integrity of a style, but kudos to them for really going above and beyond and really knowing the great history of the Kolsch. Like I said, it's one of my favorite styles, and I love the history behind it. The fact that the brewers in Cologne, they looked east and they saw all these pilsners going on, and they said, "Yeah, you know what? Those techniques are good, but you know what? With our ale yeast, we're pretty sure we can brew a beer that is just as good, if not better, if we just take a couple of their lagering techniques." And in my opinion, I really, really love it. That's why it's my favorite beer style. Stoneyard Vineyards saying hot day IPA is that's the way to go. Yeah, I do love a good IPA too. Um, yeah, they're really solid. So are you, Stoneyard? Are you more of a kind of a? Oh, I hate to put it this way because it's such an American centric way of asking this question, but I'm going to do it anyway. Are you more of a West Coast IPA guy or a New England Northeast IPA guy? Or I guess you could say traditional English, although those are it's a different hop profile, but it's still kind of the same, shooting for the same level of bitterness that a lot of the West Coast, traditional American IPAs go for. So I know a lot of people tend to shift one way or the other on the IPA debate. For me, it's kind of a mood thing, really. Like, I really enjoy them both. I really, I really like the cool West Coast profile. We're gonna have a good piney, resiny bitterness, but at the same time, we're gonna give you some lovely citrus aromas to kind of chew on. And then you've got the Northeast all the way over in all the way into the orange juice, grapefruit juice territory. Super juicy, super hazy, things like that. Yeah. Stone Adventure says thirsty IPA. That's a good one. Mm. Yeah, whatever IPA is in front of you, right? That's the one you want to drink. Yeah. Burning Beard says love both styles and both have their place. Which, yeah, that's totally where I'm at too. It really depends on what kind of mood I'm in for. Am I in the mood for something a little fruitier, or do I really just want to cut the palate with some good hoppy bitterness? Mm, mm. Yeah, so I'm trying to decide what beer to brew next. Um, we're getting towards, we're starting to think ahead 4 to 6 weeks. So what's that? September, mid to late, early to mid September. 8 weeks would be, late September. So I'm trying to think ahead. So I'm thinking an amber ale might be really solid. I'm thinking an Oktoberfest. Fest beer could be really good. I don't know what else, or maybe just a really drinkable golden ale. Um, I am a guy who does a lot of college football tailgating, American football here in the U.S. So I need to restock my beer supply a little bit because I'm going to be consuming quite a bit more in the coming months here. So yeah, I need something that's good. The problem is when we start the American football season, it can still be pretty hot out. It's late August, early September. So, it can be what is it? 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit, what is that? 30, 35 Celsius, something like that. And by the time we get to the end of the football season, November, December, way up here in the Northland, you're looking at snow, 6 inches of snow on the ground. So the question is, what beer or a couple of beers do you brew to get you through that transitionary season? Do you start with something lighter and then move to something maltier towards the end, or do you just kind of dive straight into the amber and kind of do the amber all the way through? That's kind of the battle I always fight this time of year. Is like, what do I brew next that's gonna really help me through this transition? But isn't that what's really great about beer is that it's so seasonal? Um, that this time of year. So we had a buddy come to visit us from out of town the other week, and he wanted to go get some beers at a local brewery around here, and which there are like 2 dozen options for us to go pick from. Which really lucky we have all these breweries around us. But he really likes dark beers. That's he's not he's definitely a whiskey whiskey, wine, and dark beer kind of guy, which that's not quite me, but I totally get where they're coming from, and I like 2 of those things quite a lot. So he was up here and he was like, all right, well, let's go get a beer. Well, it's late June and we're trying to find dark beer. And I never really realized just how seasonal the craft beer production gets up here, because I took him to a brewery where when I was last there, they had one pale ale, one IPA on tap, and then their next darkest beer was an amber, and then it only got progressively darker into the porters and stouts from there. And then like the dark Dunkel lagers, because we were there in the middle of winter. So I was like, oh, well, we should go to this brewery because they had like 10 different dark beers to pick from and 2 light beers. So we get over there. They don't even have an amber on tap. Like everything was lighter than an amber in terms of color and malt profile. And I was like, holy cow, man, the best I could get for him was like some IPA that was kind of, getting towards ruby, but not even really that close. So it was kind of weird that like, we have these really big seasonal swings in the types of beers that are produced locally, at least around here, which I thought was, really cool, even though I couldn't quite get him what he wanted. But then we did manage to go to a brewery that was pretty famous for their porters and stouts. And of course they only had, I think, 3 or 4 different dark beer options too. So, it wasn't like they were exactly swimming in the dark beer either. So yeah, it's great how seasonal beer is, but as a home brewer who likes to take his beer to events and whose friends like to drink my beer, it's a bit of a challenge to kind of plan ahead this sort of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna have to keep thinking on it. Burning Beard says maybe a nice red ale. Yeah, that might be good. I've never brewed a red before, so that might actually be a good start. Tony Ball says brew IPAs. They're good all year long, which I agree. I will drink an IPA any time of the year. But my friends, not so much. You know, they're not quite as big a hopheads as I am. So, you know, I do like to please a crowd. You know, that's why I, do YouTube. You know, stuff like that. All right, y'all. So I'm about out of beer stories for the day. I want to thank you all for coming out and supporting the stream tonight. Much appreciated. I think I'm going to start to try to stream a little bit more consistently. I'm going to try to do a lot more Monday night streams to kind of keep the momentum going here. It's becoming pretty obvious to me. And if you're a fellow beer tuber like me, here's something I've noticed, and maybe you can let me know in the comments or the chat right now if you see this too. But one of the things I've noticed is that YouTube is very much encouraging us creators to do a lot more live content. They've added a go live button. They're adding all these live streaming features and things like that. So, I think, as a community of YouTubers that doesn't always get the same play as stuff like video games or different, makeup and unboxing stuff. I think it's important we continue to try to champion some of the live content and some of the things YouTube wants to do so we can continue to grow as a brewtubing community. So again, I appreciate you all swinging by the live streams tonight. It's definitely something I'm going to be doing more consistently. I like Monday nights. If that all works for you, I think that's great. And I love getting to interact with the chat too, because my videos are very, very produced, very edited down. So this provides me a really nice break. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. Mittelfrue, I totally, Brenda's still totally around. She had to go visit a friend tonight, but she loves hanging out with us on the live streams here too. Yeah, Rod J, totally right. Yeah, biggest view numbers, a lot of big watch time spikes seem to come from these live streams. Absolutely. Starting your videos, make a brew called Chlorophyll Breakdown for fall, like a farm brew. Ooh, that sounds really cool. That sounds good. You should post a video about that. Maybe you already have one. I'll have to go look. Mittelfrua says, I get a kick how they play one off another. Yeah, they really do, don't they? They really try to play each other off. But once again, thanks y'all for joining me tonight. I appreciate all the chat and the support. And I'll probably be back next Monday. Be sure to check out my video tomorrow on hop production in the US, and keep an eye out later in the week for the first ever episode of Beer Tech Tested, where I'm going to put some beer gadgets from the internet to the test to see how they hold up. And this week we're going to be doing a bottle insulator to really make sure it keeps your beer cold. All right, cheers everybody. Have a good one.